Hello, everyone, and welcome to another casual stroll through Lord of the Rings Online. My name is Matt Elliott. I go by Scenario on the message boards, and I'm a senior world designer for Lord of the Rings Online. And I've been doing this for a very long time now. So, for those of you that have not been to this stream before, this is a world design focused stream where I walk through the world of Middle Earth in Lord of the Rings Online, talk about what goes into building the landscape, building the dungeons, and just our general process for planning and preparing to make all the landscapes that you jump in and play. So for today's stream, we are going to be focusing on the introduction of our Update 40 landscape and doing a special preview of that. It is an area called Umbar môkh. It is the underpinnings beneath the city of Umbar Baharbel. And we can see here the map with some special new map notes on it. Before I get too deep into that, a couple of things about the stream if you are new to it. This, as I said before, this is a world design focused stream, so I'm not going to be answering any questions regarding things like game systems, class balance, PvMP, even the lag. I may be able to talk a little bit about some of the efforts that we're doing to kind of help curtail some of those issues, but I'm not going to talk too deeply into those. But if you have questions about world design, housing, those kinds of things, feel free to drop them in chat, and I will do my best to answer them for you. Also, I tend to talk a lot while I'm in these streams, and I frequently forget to have a drink of water. So I got my handy dandy ginger ale here, and I got my water here. So if it's been a while since you've seen me take a sip of something, just let me know in chat to kind of remind me to have a drink. So I'm going to kick that off with some ginger ale. So this is kind of an unusual time for our streams. We usually go for the afternoon, but with the timing of the launch of the preview on Bullroar, we felt this was like a good time to do it. So we're starting here with the map of Umbar Baharbel here. You can see, and on the map we have some brand new map notes. These kind of represent tunnel entrances. They are available for filter on your map panel, and they'll show up on radar as well. And these will let you know where you need to go in order to get into the underpinnings, the Undar, as we originally were calling it as our internal name. But these will get you, into these areas. There are 5 areas underneath the city of Umbar Baharbel, each with their own unique theme. Excuse me. We're trying to, basically make Umbar's Moria. Have different areas, have different themes. The fun thing about this too is as we were coming up with the design for it, we were trying very hard to make the landscape underneath mimic the size and composition of the landscape above. So Umbar môkh is roughly about the size of Umbar Baharbel. The difference being is it's a bit more complex than your normal Moria landscape, and hopefully because of that it feels like you're having a bit more to explore. We're playing a little bit too with things like the creature density in these areas, and I think that's something that'll be very important once we start hitting public testing with this on Bullroar, is getting a sense for, are there enough mobs on landscape? Should there be more? Should there be less? Are the monster camps enough to, support the player needs throughout this? So, before we waste too much time, why don't we head on into the game? So here we are. This is Kabarkad, the crypts. So one of the first areas that the content experience for Umbar môkh will send you into the crypts of Umbar môkh. This can be found kind of in the southern portion. The entrances can be found in the southern portions of Umbar Baharbel, and are kind of treated as the tombs and crypts of Umbarim nobility that have kind of fallen to both corruption, to become a hive of scum and villainy, basically. We have smugglers, grave robbers, things have woken the dead here, and other creepy crawlies have decided to, make this their own. Um, in this hub, anyways, we have members of Coltech's regimen who have kind of come in, much to the chagrin of the nobility of Umbar, have kind of come in and staked their claim on this area. Let's boost my run speed just a little bit so that I can casually stroll through here. So, like I said, we wanted to try to make each area feel distinct, feel unique, and we also wanted to try to push what our scene file systems could do. We've experimented a little bit with using scene files to put in sentient made decorations. I don't want to say human made because these aren't all human made necessarily, but things like we've got these vases scattered around. Other areas will have crates and whatnot, but we wanted to try to find a way to use our systems that we usually use for scattering things like bushes and trees around and see if we can push them into a more urban environment. We played some with that in in the city itself. In Angmar Reborn, we played a little bit with it. In Gundabad, we played a little bit with it. And so we wanted to continue that kind of evolution of the concept here in the crypts. One of the things, too, that was important as we're working in these areas as well, each area kind of has its own theme. We also wanted to make sure that each area has pockets of distinct layouts and designs. So it's not like you're just running through a space that looks and feels the same everywhere you go, because that can make it a little bit easier to get lost. We also do have maps currently. They are placeholder. Usually in our process, we use placeholder maps so that we can do play testing, so that when we put it onto Bullroar, players can play test it as well without feeling like they're getting lost too much. What we'll end up doing is probably within the next week and a half or so, we will do a final pass on regenerating the radar images for the region, and then once we've done that, then we'll hand those radar images, a compiled version of those radar images, over to our UI artist, and he'll do the final pass on the maps for us. It's not the easiest or most ideal process, but we get the job done. Hold on one second. Let me turn off all of the buzzing that's going on my phone. There we go. So Serum Bane says, feels like under France with these catacombs. And yes, that is one of the things that we wanted to do, or that I wanted to do as I was constructing this area, was each area we wanted to try to have some sort of real world analog that we could use as inspiration. And the Parisian catacombs were certainly what we leaned into for the crypts portion of this experience. Keeping the ceilings higher than they probably needed to be, but you get these really nice silhouettes as you're walking in. We're leveraging the player keylight system so that you get shadows casting everywhere. We're still working on optimizing the space. I actually did an optimization pass end of last week, and I have another bunch of assets that are coming in that are optimized assets for me to use that I'll be setting into place later this week. So yeah, I'm really happy with how this space has turned out. It's a fun mix of old and new assets combined, where we have, for those of you that are familiar with the Barrow Downs, you may see some similar shapes and forms, in the archways, but then we have both some new assets as well as some refurbished and repurposed assets to kind of make this place look and feel distinct and interesting. A little familiar, but also a new approach to things. We're just going to delete that so that I can walk through it. Lost Shire Hobbit said, "Why did you decide to go under the city rather than expand more of the Cape of Umbar?" Largely because I think we wanted to, we put this work into the city of Umbar Baharbel, and we really didn't want to just then immediately send people away and out of it, right? Like, we wanted Umbar, the city itself, to both be a character and be a fixture for the players for a little while. And as we were talking about what we wanted to do next, we didn't really want to kind of send players here briefly and then send them out again, and send them away, because I think the city of Umbar represents like a pretty significant, addition to the game, and we wanted to make sure that we were telling stories of the characters in here. One of the things that we're doing as far as the content goes in this area is it is very focused on the kindred of the coin and giving the members of the kindred that are alive and present in the city opportunities to have additional stories being told about them. And it felt like having those stories be set in the city in some way was important. So yeah, this area was fun but meticulous to build. I will say that, and it kind of started us on a process of we have a very modular. We have 17 years of assets that are available to us, and so it started a process of us kind of like building these spaces with a collection of assets, and then trying to find where we've used a combination of assets fairly regularly so that we could like condense and collapse and help improve the asset load and performance in these areas by doing that. So here we have another hub here in the city, here in the underpinnings. This one in particular I think is meant to be more smugglers and traders that have kind of set up a little outpost for themselves. There's storylines that basically have a trade network, an underground trade network that are going throughout this whole region. And this is one of those kind of holdover spots for that trade network. One of the things too that we're doing, let me run back here to the hub so we can see them, is our stable network. We do have a stable network here in the city, but they're tunnel guides. We aren't using stable routes or anything. This area is a bit complex, so the idea of having full-on normal stable routes throughout the area was not really appealing to us. But the idea being that we have, basically tour guides. So these tunnel guides will take you through the region. The way these are set up, just like normal stable masters, but they're more akin to how we set up the stable network in the Shield Isles, where if you are a standard player, meaning that you have not purchased anything before or have not done VIP or anything like that, you will be able to swift travel between adjacent hubs. So this tunnel guide would be able to take you to the first hub that we were in, as well as a couple of the hubs that are in neighboring areas. But if you wanted to go from one end to the other, you'll need to have access to swift travel in order to do that. Speaking of travel too, this update is seeing a bunch of new stable master points added to the landscape of Umbar Baharbel. Let me zoom out and clear all just to talk about that real quick. So previously we only had West Gate, North Gate, and East Gate set up. With update 40, we're going to be introducing stable masters for the Bloody Eagle, Swain's Guild Hall, Gate of Sorrows, Fleet Gate, and then the Hunter Camp here out in right here in Aradar. You'll be able to get to the hunter camp as well. There's also going to be a new milestone at that hunter camp too, so you can continue your dailies there with a little bit more convenience. Thank you for the reminder to drink. So Lotro Steam, is there a specific pet peeve of yours regarding world building that you wish gets resolved soon? So I mean, I think there are one of the challenges that we have with a game of this age is working to produce something that kind of has a modern look and feel to it, but is required to use technology that is not as modern. And so I think one of the pet peeves of mine is like always striving to create these spaces that look and feel new and immersive, and then also running into the headache of our technology just being like, yeah, you can't push that many polygons, you can't do these cool graphics features that other modern games can do, or even just like optimizing this thing is harder because it's an older tool. I think for us, it's important for us that as we're building the landscapes, these new dungeons, that we try to make something that looks and feels like it could be modern, because I think it's an interesting challenge for us, but it is definitely a hard challenge, and it would be nice to be able to sit down and not have to worry about some of the things that we have to worry about when it comes to building these spaces. It'd be nice for me to not have to have done the asset consolidation stuff that I have been doing and working with our art team on, but we have to. That's just the way that our tools work and the way that our game works. We have to do that. Let's see. I'll pause here briefly, see if there are any other questions. Let's see. So I saw a question earlier up asking if this was the new raid, and then there's another one. Are there any new catacomb-esque instances coming out? So for this update, this is purely a endgame landscape update. There are no new 3-person, 6-person raid instances that are coming with this. This is purely for landscape content. However, one of the areas in this region is built specifically for group play in mind. I think they're aiming at duo or 3-person group play, but that's the intention, the goal with that space. All right, let's see. So Jay Burridge says, gotta say that with the past few expansions being underground, I don't particularly want to go back underground for a very long time. So the hope is that our content progression... Oh, hey there, Mr. Crocodile. We have sewer crocs. The hope is that with the content flow for this space, you're going to be kind of splitting your time between above ground and below ground, because you're going to need to be interacting with the kindred of the coin, and that interaction is going to kind of require you to go and visit them at the meeting hall of Darlaja, and then kind of handle various tasks that they ask of you, not all of which are here underneath the city. Let's see. Folgers Red says, so when can we expect an Umbarian Riviera zone with Aragorn and Arwen beach vacation questline? So while we're not specifically going to be doing that, I don't think. We have been starting to talk about how we're going to be implementing the biomes for the Update 42 expansion pack that's happening later this year, and kind of what mix of biomes that we're wanting to put in there. I don't think there's necessarily anything Riviera like in there, but it is something that we've been thinking about because we do want to, we're kind of in uncharted lands right now, and we want to make these uncharted lands interesting and compelling on their own. Oh, this is where I just was. So, for those of you that might have been able to guess, we are now in the sewers portion of Umbar, or of Umbar môkh. This area is associated with the trying to remember name, the Sail Haven. So before I get too far, each section of Umbar môkh is kind of related to a ward above it. So the crypts are related to the lower ward. The sewers are related to the Sail Haven, and bear in mind I'm using internal terminology here. The final names are I think they're already in. So we have, well, this is the camp. But so each area of Umbar môkh does have a region of landscape above it that it's kind of correlated with. Ponton Finberry says Umbar is very nice. I love how the rugs throughout the city change, so it feels like it's really alive. I think that was one of the important things for the designer who was working on it, is he did want to make sure that there was a sense of movement, there was a sense of diversity and variety throughout the city, so that you could kind of be in one spot and know where you are just by being there, kind of. That also led to some challenges in developing it, but what's game design without some challenges? So here's another hub. This entrance, one of the things we did for entrances in this area too is landscape entrances. We started using hatches in a couple of spots to let people in. Let's see. All right. Is there a specific pet peeve? I answered that one. Dasmordo says, pretty awesome crypt designs. Just need bug spray and perhaps an air freshener. Lavender scent, no citrus. Well, citrus would actually be very poignant to Umbar. I think some of the groves outside of the city are citrus groves. So that makes a lot of sense. Dagger Thief says, please fix all Moria stable master routes. It's annoying to ride on a drunken goat. You have to worry about falling off a cliff with. I think that's, if we're talking about pet peeves and whatnot, the stable masters and the way they kind of handle cornering would probably be another pet peeve of mine. And if I could get a system that would allow me to kind of pick spots where you slow down a little bit to go around corners a little bit easier, I would love that. I think with Moria, one of my big goals, my big hopes and goals at some point is to kind of go through and audit the just audit the routes themselves and make sure that we have the right routes in the right place, kind of similar to what was done with the Trollshaw's routes. Basically kind of overhaul that system. It's tricky to do that when it's tricky to justify the time to do that sort of thing when we don't necessarily have work we're doing in that area. But one of these days I'll be able to get in there and revamp that system. I think the travel system in general could use a lot of love, as far as looking at some of our older methods of how we built the travel routes and how they got where they went and whatnot. I think we had a lot of routes that have trait requirements or rep requirements on them, and those were built in that way, when they were built that way because they were kind of end game areas at the point that those routes were built. And so the fast travel was sort of intended to be be an end game reward. I don't know that that's necessarily successful anymore. So certainly something for us to look into adjusting. Let's see. Rapthorn says, could you please put a mailbox in the Bloody Tavern? I didn't realize there wasn't one there. That's certainly something that we can consider adding. Let's see. The crafting hall one could really do with being moved and lower level requirement given to give lower levels a nice quick way to get back and forth to the VIP guy at the entrance to save porting in and out of housing area. I'm not sure what that means. It's probably in context to the stable masters that were added to Umbar Baharbel. Get Shocked asks, on this topic, how do you feel about using AI to upscale all older models and art while keeping the option to keep the old school graphics for setups that can't handle it? Personally, I don't like AI. I think it's being used for the wrong things. And I don't have much of an opinion on it beyond that. I think, I know too many people in the art realm to feel comfortable with AI, at least in the way that it is frequently being used right now. And I'll leave it at that. G Lipscomb says, will there be new missions here? I'm not sure if there are going to be missions planned for this space. We have a, this update does represent, oh, hey, Z Fighting, I'll have to fix that later. This update does represent a number of new people on the team, kind of learning the content, learning how to build content, learning how to build the game. And I think our intention with this area is to, very much make it something that, both the players can enjoy, but also is an opportunity for these new people to come in to train up, to learn the systems, learn how the game works, learn how the tools works, and eventually they will have opportunities to build instances and build missions and whatnot, but I don't think we're necessarily leaning too heavy on that. That is to say, there may be missions. I'm not sure myself, and that might be a question better posed to one of our content designers, or for discover yourself in one of the Bowler previews. Imagor says, can we have some dailies here? Umbar only has 8 daily quests. It's very boring to do some. So I believe there's more than just 8 daily quests in Umbar. They're not all clustered in one spot. You have the Hunter's Camp, which is the biggest cluster of them. But I do believe there are other daily quests that are sprinkled throughout the Cape of Umbar. They just may require a little bit of extra hoofing it to get to them. Rico Lasvos says, chickens to Umbar, when? I would say the easiest way to get chickens to Umbar is for us to build the Haradwaith, or Harandor rather, and we're not quite there yet. Not to say that chickens won't ever be able to get to Umbar, but I don't think that's a considerable priority right now, especially, like I said, with a newer team. We kind of want to focus on building forward and moving forward on things. Eothron says, you mentioned implementation of new biomes for Update 42 later this year. Could they be related to sand? Some of them might be related to sand. We're currently planning 4 different new biomes. This isn't to say that all of the assets in them will be completely wholly unique assets, but we are going to try to create a look and feel for each area that is unique. And there is likely to be some portion of it that includes sand, because I hear sand gets everywhere. All right, let's move ourselves on. I think we've spent plenty of time in the sewers, so I think we should start working our way up to more dry areas, if you are all okay with that. Small potato. All right, so Small Potato 003 says, will there be Umbar housing? Keeps fingers crossed. I think Umbar housing is definitely a matter of when, not if. We have another housing neighborhood that is currently in development that we are, there we go. That is currently in development that we want to finish building first. But then after that, we can start thinking about what our next neighborhood is going to be. Salter asks, is this part of the next expansion or a quest pack? So this is part of our Update 40 quest pack. Like with all of our landscapes and whatnot, you'll still be able to visit this region. You'll be able to come here, visit, explore it. You just won't be able to do the content if you don't buy the quest pack. That's all. So we are now in the Undercity. What is it? Takdar, the cellars. The idea being here is this is the kind of interconnected cellarways of underneath Umbar Baharbel. And here we have what is affectionately called the Black Market. So this is one of the major hubs in the area where players can, basically do everything from tasks to crafting. I think I have put an auction house somewhere in here as well. Though it is surrounded on either side by smugglers. So watch out for that. All right. El Viejo Toby says, hi, any news for 4K screen compatibility? I can't really answer that question for you. That is a question that is better suited for our UI art or engineering teams. Mario Justin says, is the area mostly the same elevation, or is there some verticality, i.e. the vein of descending to the second hall of Moria? So there are some changes in elevation depending on the areas that you're in. The crypts has a little bit of up and down, but it's nothing very extreme. Unlike Gundabad, Moria, where verticality is kind of a component of those areas, it's not really for here. This is a highly civilized, highly urbanly developed area, so there's not a lot of up and down. There's a little bit, but not a ton. For example, the Undercity, which we're in now, there's kind of an upper portion and a lower portion. I know the Flooded Undercity, which is in the south, kind of related to the Fleet Fast, which we'll take a look at shortly, is a little bit, has some up and down changes in it as well. But yeah. Let's see. So yeah, another question about Umbar housing. Have you thought about adding walls and door frames that we can use for decorating our houses with? From Patty McGinty. So that's a stretch goal of mine. I currently have some requests in for some generic doors that can be made usable, that we can so we can have doors that go in the door frames of each of the different individual neighborhoods. That's phase 1, at least. Phase 2 and beyond is making like door frames and decorative walls and whatnot that have door frames in them. The tricky thing is with anything like that, like I don't really think it's a good use of any of our times to create a door frame permutation for every single door type that's out there, for every single appearance type that is available for housing. So until I'm able to allow players to, dye and change the surface of a like blank wall, I don't think we're going to go down the road of those kinds of permutations. Crispy Chicken says, the terrain I want to see added to the game is that section of the Emyn Wheel Frodo and Sam traversed on their way to the Dead Marshes. When might that happen? Sadly, it is not something that is directly on our schedule. We do have kind of our own big list of like, here are areas that we could do, fill in the gap regions for, and Emyn Wheel is certainly one of those. We also have been paying attention to like, what areas support which level breaks, where do we have kind of a gap in a level break, like where does this level range need more content, kind of thing. And I've talked before about how like, I think one of our major one of our leveling pain points, and don't mind this is part of the optimization stuff that I'm doing. One of the pain points I think we have is that Moria is can be a hurdle for players to get through, especially if they've played through it multiple times. And I think that's whenever we do our next region that is a fill in the gaps region, I think that a Moria alternative is going to be our priority. But then after that, we'll take a look at our list and see, what makes sense to do next. I love these spiders so much. The camel spider-esque spiders, like they're maybe a little shinier than they need to be, but they're so cool and creepy. They bother me, but that's great. Hello, friend. You're terrifying as well. All right. If there's ever an Umbar housing area, maybe since it's a new area, we can have condo housing set up, just no HOAs. So I think the assets that we have for Umbar housing, the Umbar buildings and whatnot, really do lend themselves to kind of like a condo or apartment style neighborhood. I wouldn't say I would want that to be the only kind of offering for Umbar housing. I think it would be. Oh, before I go off on that tangent too much, this is what our rally points look like for Umbar môkh. You have your bedroll as opposed to the defeat ring. I decided to go with a bedroll and a little candle lamp and backpack. So in case you're running around, you run across that. No, that's where you'll go when something just steamrolls you, if something steamrolls you. Let's open this. Let some stuff unload. Yeah, so don't mind this. Like I said, what you're seeing here is part of the optimization process. What that's basically saying is I need to go through and remove some entities, thin out an area when you see the lights go off like that. So yes, back to Umbar housing. I think Umbar housing is something that can really work well as kind of an apartment complex, but I think I would want to kind of do what we did with Rohan housing, where we have two options, and so we could make a version of Umbar housing that is kind of more like your classic housing neighborhood, and then we could make a version that is more like your, more like that apartment style living. Um, Let's see. Is there any interest in doing another mini update like Wildwood or the Angle in the near future, like going north of Thorin's Hall or bridging Foreshell and Angmar? There's definitely interest in it. There's just that little hiccup of the time for it. What is the time? What time do we have to make that happen? I think we definitely want to do it. There's a lot of interest internally in doing it, but we need to find the right time and the right place for it. Let's see. So Pee Wee McGee says, am I with other people that I'm a bit worn out with dark, dank environments? Moria is like torture to have to go through. I skip whenever possible. And then how about housing Umbar? So housing Umbar, we talked about that just now. As far as dark environments goes, like I said earlier, I think we're trying to make sure that there is a balance in this, where you are able to get time inside, get time outside, so that you are not in here altogether. But that said, I'm trying to make sure as we go through that the lighting in these spaces is not obscenely oppressive and dark all the time. So now we're entering an area that you may see that I have the in development build marker up on the screen. So the areas we just wandered through, those are the most finished of Umbar môkh. The area that I'm in now, which is internally named the Temples, is still in heavy development. We're still working on it. So there's not the fine detail in here that we'd like to have. So it's not finished yet. But we did want to run around in here. For those of you that like housing and that have an Erebor house, you will be able to get all of the day files that are used in these areas for your Erebor house. It's been a while since we've introduced new day file ambiances for Erebor housing, so there will be a set of 5 of those that you'll be able to pick up. And I think housing rewards in general for Umbar môkh are kind of split between our housing furniture and barter items. And I think there are some quest rewards as well. Let's see. So Lotro Plier 1 says, "Hi there. Why are there no footprints in the sand outside, like in snow, for example?" Well, I think not to make any specific defense for the lack of it. I do think that footprints in sand are a bit different than footprints in snow. I feel like footprints in snow are very static. Snow is clingy. You put your print in, and you kind of can leave the print. Whereas sand flows. So representing what a player footprint in sand looks like, could be a little inaccurate, or even just like a little weird feeling if we don't get it right. Not to say that we shouldn't try to make it happen, but I do think that there's some complexity to how a footprint would look in sand that might make it challenging for the effects to be produced. So Ethy says, I just joined. This is an interior area. Do quest markers work? So this is a landscape area. It's not a dungeon space. It's a landscape area. So you don't have to worry about quest markers behaving weird like they do in dungeon spaces. It's a normal landscape space. All sorts of lovely placeholder maps. These maps will be in our next Bull Roar. So should you go and update Bull Roar and play in Bull Roar, you'll have the opportunity to check this out. Yay, our gladiator camps. I haven't actually seen this yet. The person who's working on it, I think, just checked this in at the end of the week last week. This build's a couple days old, and I think Bull Roar's update is a little bit newer, so there should be more updates than what we're seeing right here. Trying to work my way to the Gladiator Quest Hub. So the idea being with the Gladiator Quest Hub is it is a so that takes me back to the crypts, so I want to go back this way. The Gladiator Quest Hub is it is underneath the arena, and it is a space that kind of escapees from the arena have kind of hidden themselves away. They don't want to return to the arena, so they're trying to find themselves a place to be happy and safe. So where am I? I gotta go north. Let's see. So Pee Wee McGee says, maybe reduce the loitering population in the city to cut down the lag. So there are some things that we're looking at as far as that goes. I think one of the things that we ran into is, like, we do want the city to look and feel alive and active and lush. But I think one of the things that we were running into is things that, are casting reflections that don't necessarily need to cast reflections. For example, the groups of people. And I don't know specifically if there are things being worked on to kind of address that, but I think that's one of the things that would help the space when we have the ability to do that. So here we are in the Gladiators Quest Hub. A lot of these NPCs could probably stand to be dressed up like gladiators. But like I said, this is all in development stuff. Alright, let's go to our stable master and see if I can't get us to go over. Alright, we'll go here. And then we'll go. Where do I need to go? Don't mind me as I cheat my way to the hub without popping up admin panels. So let's see. The Master of Dungeons says, is this quest pack free for VIP? I'm not sure. That is not something that usually I have a much interaction with as far as that kind of thing. If other quest packs have been, I would assume this to be, but I would say wait until there's an official announcement to really nail it in. Aaron S. says, any hints on what the housing area that is in development is? And for that, I would say watch my previous stream, and you will get the hint. what was my previous? The Athelian stream. Taras asked when we can expect to see that neighborhood available for beta testing. We don't have a launch date planned for it yet, so its availability for testing is up in the air because of that as well. So I would say that is something you'll have to wait for an announcement on. A lot of these kind of features that we build as little side projects here and there, those are things that as we build them, we kind of build them and then put them in our pocket, and we leave them until we're ready to start thinking about, okay, when can we slot this in? That's Erebor Housing did that, Wildwood, we did that. There are times when we, the designers, and usually the world team, end up finding ourselves with what we call lab weeks, and that's when we build these things. And the idea being that with these lab weeks we can create cool stuff, and then we just hold on to it until we're ready to start furthering development on it. Right now, the neighborhood development is kind of on pause a little bit because we need the person who's working on it to finish up working on this, for example. And I think what will end up happening is that will be kind of his project to work on when there are little lull periods in between major updates and whatnot. All right, let's see. Imagor says, will we get camel mounts from the next expansion? I don't think we are far enough ahead in deciding what we are doing with our plans to determine the kinds of mounts that will be available as both pre-order bonuses and just general items to get. But I will say that camel mounts are something that we have talked about. They're something that when we were thinking about coming to this area of the world, what kinds of things would be interesting and compelling for mount types, and camels are certainly ones that came up in a not serious manner. Another one that came up was ostriches. I don't think we'll ever get ostrich mounts because they do kind of look silly, but that is something that came up as a kind of joking suggestion as we were talking about it. Green Tea asks, what are some of the challenges of building an underground location? Some time ago, I believe you mentioned that the issue, there's some issues with too many light sources. So lighting is definitely a challenge. We don't want to completely rely on just the player key light, because if we did, then these campfires and whatnot they wouldn't stand out. So and not having lighting tends to flatten out a space. So lighting is certainly an extra layer of effort that we don't normally have to undertake when we are building just standard open landscape. Another challenge is actually building the roof because it's its own separate height map that we can sculpt and paint and whatnot. And so building both basically building the floor and the ceiling, it kind of effectively doubles the amount of time it takes for us to make an area like this, because we have to worry about having the ceiling be just as detailed as the floor is. So we're running around right now in the flooded Undercity area. This is a bit more of an open area. Again, this is a bit more in development. There's some lighting that has been done here, in part because these assets that were used came with lighting baked into them. But there are other areas here, as you walk in here, for example, that just aren't lit. And the idea is that eventually we'll go through and polish and come through and light these areas so that you're not relying purely on your player key light and relying on these little point lights here and there. Pee-wee McGee says, more hooks in housing. The houses are so big and they're very hard to decorate. You make so many nice little items, but no hooks to put them on. So I will say to set expectations. Do not expect there to be more hooks added to the housing system. We already have a lot of hooks in there, and that can cause loading issues and loading concerns. I personally want to push for more space filling decorations instead. So things that can kind of fill a 5x5 area, a 10x10 area, a 20x20 area. That way, those decorations, can do more work with less effectively. Wonder if I can get in here. Oh, I can. He hasn't put the restrictions on yet. So that's where I'm leaning towards. Excuse me. When it comes to decorations, is pushing things more towards that. Things that can fill space. I think there's still room and purpose for smaller individual housing decorations. But I think we need to balance that a bit more with things that can fill space. And I think one of the things that's been kind of nice about the process that we've used to consolidate assets here in Umbar môkh, as well as in Umbar Baharbel, and what we're going to be doing in Minas Tirith, is it gives us the opportunity to kind of look at where we've done place settings and table settings and whatnot, and be like, oh, well, we'll just group those together, send it to art, and ask the art team to turn that into a single entity. I know from the the big list of housing object requests that we had on the old forums and the one that kind of exists in the new ones now, a lot of the requests that come through for those are actually not individual items, but they're collections of items that would need to be turned into a new entity in order to make it work. If we have the art time for it, this update, there are a few of those things that I've requested that are kind of more Umbar themed that I want to get introduced. So yeah. So this is the western portion of the flooded undercity, the Dil Miz, the Burse. So this area here, the western half of it, we can take a look at it in the map. So this area is kind of divided into two spaces. The eastern half is kind of meant to be more the solo-friendly area, and the western half is meant to be the group-focused area. In the center of it, we have our quest hub here, which you can kind of use to kind of spoke off and do everything. It's very centrally located. It's also got the milestone here as well. So let's see. Question from Doomy92 is that ruin has a lot of mushrooms. Why not weeds? We do a lot with plants on landscape, and we just, for the character of this space, I think we wanted to push towards something a little different, and mushrooms fit that bill. So yeah, here we have the elites. So from my understanding of this area, from what the content folks have been doing, a lot of the gameplay in this is going to be mostly focused on the camp spaces. So while there will be areas that have these kind of elite mobs throughout them, the real meat and potatoes are going to be in camps. I do want to warn people that when this goes on to Bull Roar, it is very likely that there are going to be issues with the camp that we are in right now, this spider camp. So it's very important. For those of you that are interested in Bull Roar, want to go through Bull Roar, when you go to play Bull Roar, this camp, where I'm standing now, is safe. Where I'm looking right now, do not walk towards this area. It will eat your character. Just as a fair warning. The fun reason behind that is where Umbar môkh is placed in the landscape is very close to the end of the world. And weird things happen to the client when you get too close to the end of the world. So in later builds, that section that I was telling you not to walk towards, that'll be blocked off. But for the first bull roar, just to warn players, if you walk into that area, the client is going to go black. You're not going to be able to move or interact with your character, and really your recourse is going to be go to character select, select that character, delete it, and if you copied the character over, recopy it or make a new character. Just as a heads up, this is the fun of development. So Guy Dioyo says, can we get a Broken Moral Compass title? I'm not sure what that's in relation to. I'm sure there's a joke there that I don't fully understand. And then Goblin Housing, when? Orion and I have talked about monster player housing before and what that would be, what that would mean. That doesn't mean that we have plans for it, but we do have ideas. And I'll leave it at that. Lyron 1986 says, will there be an individual map for each level of vertical space? Deepsgrave and Gundabad did not, and it was very difficult to navigate. So there's there is no over-under really in Umbar môkh like there was in Deepsgrave. Deepsgrave was an experiment. I think there were some parts of it that were successful. There were some parts that weren't. Here in Umbar môkh, effectively the maps are flat. Like, you don't have to worry about over-under. You don't have to worry about how deep down something is. Like, that's not a concern for these areas. You know, these areas are, you know, there may be slopes that you go down, slopes that you go up, but overall, it's all, you know, it's all normal. All right, so I'm just noticing that it is now after 1. So it is time for me to wrap things up. I'm going to speed run these questions, and then we'll wrap up the stream. So will there ever be more hairstyles or beards for the races? I can't speak specifically, but I know that there is interest in doing more of that. Let's see. Game. There are no plans. So BC Walker asked if there are any changes to plans to change how decoration works for housing. No plans for that. What is there is what is there. The hook system is kind of what we're working with, and we don't have many. We don't have any plans to change that. It would require a more significant overhaul than we can really justify the expense for right now. Lexicon really wants grass hooks for Rohan housing to get rid of the hobbit length grass effect. Sylvadeer says, will there be a devlog and give random prizes? I think it'd be fun. Will you guys have dev login and give random prizes to real players? I think it would be fun. If you're talking about that for Bull Roar, I think there are some plans to kind of help drive engagement, particularly for some of the things that we want to test in regards to the server pinning stuff. I don't know what those plans are specifically. Those are, if there is anything, you'll need to wait for an announcement from Cordovan on that front. Marculus says, I wonder if the LOTRO developers are also involved with the Amazon version coming out at some point. There's no association between us and what is being developed by the Amazon team. We're completely separate companies. We're completely separate games. And, you know, we always want to see people succeed, but we also feel like we've got our own thing going on here that we have to worry about developing. Let's see. I'm slowly getting there. Patty McGinty says, do you have plans on supporting the game after its 20th year anniversary? We have plans on supporting this game for as long as our licensor will allow us to support this game. You know, we enjoy working on this. You know, the game has been around for a very long time. It's one of the one of the survivors, I guess, of the MMO industry, where it's stayed around. Not many not many games of this type can say that it's been around for as long as LOTRO's been around, for as long as DDO's been around. Like it's part of a lineage, and we want to continue supporting it as long as we're able to continue supporting it. We did an exercise a couple years ago where we basically have another 16, 20 years worth of ideas that we can work off of, and we will bring those to reality should we have the opportunity to. Let's see. Tim Nest 001 says, "Are war steeds allowed here?" No, we're not allowing war steeds in Umbar môkh. They kind of move a bit too fast, and the whole area is probably a bit too complex for them. We're still figuring out what will be allowed as far as steeds go in this area, and a lot of that is associated with performance. Players moving fast through an area can, you saw where, like, I was running through an area fast and then all of a sudden my lights cut out. That's something that can happen to players if they move through an area too fast in this space, and we want to try to mitigate that. So we're still figuring out what we want to do for mounts, and that's an open question. Let's see. All right. Okay, so I think I'm going, because I'm not going to be able to keep up with all of these questions. So I think what I'm going to do is wrap up the stream. Thank you everyone for being here and for attending this preview of Umbar môkh. This will be coming to Bullroar soon. If Bullroar is not already up and running, I believe we have a planned test for it this week. And that will give you all the opportunity to hop in and play it. And we're looking forward to you playing and feedback. For me, the most important things as far as feedback goes is monster density as you're running around. Tell me, don't be afraid to pop onto the message boards and make a thread saying like, oh, hey, this amount of monsters seems right. We could use more, we could use less, that sort of thing, outside of monster camps anyways. So yeah. So feel free to jump in for that. Also, the warning is, with Bullroar, be safe around that spider camp. Don't go to the furthest south section of it. It will eat your character. But otherwise, jump into Bullroar, have some fun, explore Umbar môkh, check out the new travel routes that are up on the upper part of the city. And yeah, have a great week, everyone. Hope you enjoy Update 40, the testing of it, and getting to see it progress as we work on, the last few weeks of development for it. Have a great day, everyone. Oh, and one other thing to note too, we're going to be changing how I do my Casual Stroll streams. Typically, I've been doing these, kind of in the later half of the month. We're going to be switching starting in June. These streams will be aimed to be the first Wednesday of every month at 2 o'clock, our usual time. And we're going to be taking May off. So I won't be doing a stream in May, but starting in June, the first Wednesday of every month is when we'll be doing these streams. So stay tuned, and yeah, everyone have a great week.